Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name's Ashby and call me Hoopy, and today I'm going to be delving into the realm of audiobooks and why they do and don't count as reading. June is apparently Audiobook Appreciation Month, so I thought now was the perfect time. I'm going to start with the etymology, which I know is very technically of me, but it's the best place to start in my opinion. It is the origin. After all, our English word of read comes from the Old English words originally meaning consider, interpret, discern, etc. Which, yes, makes it sound like in order to read one must actually be reading physically. However, it also came to mean peruse and utter in speech. Even more than that, if we look at other languages, they all have a different origin word for their word for reading. In fact, lots of European languages have the Latin verb, please excuse my pronunciation, legere, to read, as their origin. Not only that, but that is also the origin word for lots of English words surrounding reading. Lexicon, for example. Lecture, for another. That's right, lecture, another word we use for a talk, speech, or oral presentation of some kind. Maybe even an audiobook? But we can't ignore the fact that it is important to be literate. And the best way to increase someone's literacy is by, you guessed it, physically reading books. It helps people learn how to spell words as well as proper grammar structure. For this reason, I could definitely see how audiobooks either shouldn't count or should be specified in a child's reading diary, for example. It's not just important for children though. Well, in the modern day, we read a lot of stuff. Recipes are rarely handed down orally these days, and most people read social media, even if it's just the comments on video sites. As I said, it's important to read physically for spelling and grammar reasons. And the internet just isn't it for that. In fact, lots of modern books have issues in that regard too. But that's a whole other matter and rant. I was actually discussing the topic of audiobooks with a friend of mine a while ago, and he says that while he mostly reads audiobooks, he does try to read at least one book physically a year. He reads a lot of screen at work, reading and writing emails and stuff like that, so doesn't feel the need to physically read a lot, but does like to for my aforementioned reasons. One thing I see pointed out a lot when I see this argument online is disabilities. Some say it's a bad faith argument, as I clearly didn't mean them when I was saying about audiobooks don't count as reading, but the world is a very disabled place. If we start deciding that they only count for disabled people, then we open the door to discussion of what counts as disabled enough for audiobooks to count as reading. Obviously, most blind people require audiobooks to read. And I say most because some legally blind people still have a level of vision that can be used for reading. See, even if we use the most obvious disability that audiobooks are good for, there is still room for policing. Other disabilities that it can be actively good for, just sort of off the top of my head, are dyslexia, which is probably the second most obvious one. Any disability that includes hand pain, whether that's arthritis, a connective tissue disorder, fibromyalgia, anything. Chronic fatigue syndrome, because then you don't have to hold a book. And for people with ADHD, it can both make reading more accessible and make it easy to do things like chores and driving. This is due to something called executive dysfunction. If you want to look it up, body doubling is another thing to search to get a better idea of how this can help. And now we come to what is really at the heart of this video. What does it even mean for a book to count as reading? Count for what? Reading is a hobby, not a competition. I see people say that's easier, in which case you could do it yourself if you feel like someone is cheating, but again, it's meant to be a pleasurable activity and nothing more. It's like saying, sure, you made that dress, but it doesn't count because you use a sewing machine instead of doing it by hand. It doesn't count as baking because you used a mixer. It doesn't count as running because you have a prosthetic leg. It doesn't count as drawing because... Actually, I have seen people say that using a graphics tablet doesn't count as drawing. I don't agree with it, but at least in that case, the outcome is different. A digital drawing versus physical drawing. But with reading, the same sections of your brain are used whether you're listening to it or reading it with your eyes. You still know the story, the only difference is that you might not know how things are spelled. But if you're physically reading, you might not know how things are pronounced. I know people have yearly reading goals, myself included, and maybe that's what people mean when they say that audiobooks shouldn't count. But again, it's not a competition. At best, it's a competition with your past self. If you've created a reading challenge and you want people to not use audiobooks, then sure, say that they don't count. I'd say it'd be a bad decision, an ableist decision, a meaningless decision, but it's your challenge, you can say what you want. Other people's reading goals, nah, you can't police them. On a personal note, I was never really interested in audiobooks. I have some physical ones we used to listen to in the car when I was growing up, but that was it. As far as my experience had been, they were for long car journeys. Now though, they've been a blessing. There are days when I can barely move. I've mostly given up all my other hobbies. Gaming, sewing, writing, they're all difficult for me. I struggle to edit every video, and unless it's scripted, I have to get someone else to do the subtitles for me. On my bad days, audiobooks are practically all I have. So yes, while I have for and against arguments, I love them. If you don't want to count them towards your personal reading goal, that's fine, don't. But don't you dare tell anyone else that it can't count towards theirs. And if you don't even have a goal, what can it possibly not count for? Thank you for watching my video. Let me know what you think. And if you want to, please like and subscribe, and maybe you'll see me in the next one. Until then, bye.